There's something special about the animatronics in Five Nights at Freddy's. They are both heroes and villains, monsters and misunderstood victims, and occasionally mere hollow husks to be worn like suits. They are so much more than just bears and bunnies. But which one smells the worst? Because let's be frank here, we may love these guys, we may want to live with these guys, but seldom do we consider exactly how bad these guys must stink. Really, having seen animatronics get bodies stuffed in themselves, stuff themselves in bodies, crawl around in sewers, and swallow pounds of garbage, and all of that without getting a bath, there's a shadow over Freddy's. And it's not the memories of the numerous deaths surrounding the franchise, it's the green fog wafting out of the animatronics. But not all of these guys stink. By my calculations, there's reason to believe that some of them might actually smell good. And when it comes to those who smell bad, the obvious choice might actually not reek the most. Might be someone unexpected. So, that's what we'll be uncovering together. Which of the FNAF animatronics smells the worst and which smells the best. And we're going to go through all of them to find out who they are. Well, all of them without doubling up. You'll see. So, let's begin. Starting with the classics. Now, during this video, we're going to group some animatronics together if there's no huge differences between them, so things don't get repetitive. So, we're going to group Freddy, Bonnie, and Foxy together because they're in the same wheelhouse here. And it's not exactly a good one. Not only are Freddy, Bonnie, and Foxy fabric suits that have been sitting in a closed, clearly damp pizzeria, meaning that they are likely starting to develop some mildew and mold, or probably have already, but also these suits were connected with the missing children incident. Newspaper reports quote that the animatronics had a strong odor and were oozing fluids, which is likely connected with the fact that the bodies of the 5 missing children were stuffed and hidden inside of them. And by the words of Fungi, we know that they weren't regularly cleaned, or likely cleaned at all. So Freddy, Bonnie, and Foxy are smelling rank. They probably have an overwhelming smell of sour rot, whether it be human decay or the mold from the water, the human rot being significantly more tangible and a lot worse. But Chica just happens to be a step above this, because we know she goes and raids the kitchen. In Help Wanted, we're forced to clean pizza off of her and spray her down with sanitizer and bug spray, because she's also crawling with roaches. So, rotten bodies, moldy fabric, and also rotten and moldy food. But Chica might, in a twist, not smell as bad, because no doubt the first thing that's going to hit you is the overpowering burn of the chemical spray. She is absolutely drenched in bug spray, and that's going to give you a searing headache before you even reach the moldy interiors. Now, Golden Freddy is a tricky outlier because most of the time he's flitting in and out of reality. But likely he smells pretty badly too. If not because of the whole stuffed bodies and mildew thing, but because of the belief, or a semi-common belief, that poltergeists can create a bad smell. Yeah, it's believed that some ghosts can downright smell like rotten eggs. And with Golden Freddy being the most ghostly of the lot, if anyone is going to have a chance of smelling like that, he definitely has the highest chance of having that honor. So either bad eggs, the same as the others, or nothing at all. And with that, I'd say the classic animatronics would rank an S in stank, and carry notes of decomposition, rot, and mildew, along with a cloud of bug spray specifically floating around Chica. And Golden Freddy may or may not smell like anything at all. It's gonna be hard to outstench them, and spoiler alert, the toy animatronics don't even stand a chance. Because the toy animatronics not only don't have any bodies shoved in, as far as we know, but have a nice plastic shell that would be easy to clean, if Freddy's cleaned them. The only exception may be Mangle, who, having been ripped apart, probably has a little bit more of a burning smell, maybe like a metal scent. Now, the puppet is a fabric-based animatronic. Most of its body is made of velveteen-looking fabric, going off FNAF 2, and with a porcelain face. Like an old baby doll, and by all accounts, it has been around for a while. And while it might still have been around the bodies, it hasn't been around them long. So it probably smells like a little dusty and musty, like a storage closet, but more nostalgia than nostantia. So These guys would rank probably at a not-so-bad level, pretty fine for the most part. They basically just smell like playground equipment, plastic for a lot of them, rusty slide for the mangle, double or nothing for the Yendos who just smell like metal, and then there's the puppet who smells like a toy pulled out of a dusty attic. Now, I won't be counting the Withereds here because that would mostly be a repeat to the classic animatronics, since they indeed are the classic animatronics. It would again just basically be repeating myself. Moving on, I'm once again going to group all of the phantoms together because I have a hunch on what they smell like. And you may be wondering how a hallucination has a smell. Well, as a matter of fact, there is a phenomenon known as phantom smells, or phantasmia, where someone may smell something that isn't there. And there's a cluster of things that can cause it, being sick, hormones, brain injury, etc. And would you believe that one of the most common phantom smells is a burning smell, like smoke or fire? And I think that fits too well. So I think the phantom animatronics probably smell like something burning, like fire and ash, but are just faint enough that you're not sure if it's real or if it's a side effect from that time Freddy munched on your head. But there's a bigger odor wafting through FNAF 3 and Fazbear's Fright, and that is Springtrap, a corpse inside of a musty old suit trapped in a wet back room of Freddy's that was sealed up with no airflow for about 30 years, give or take. A body that has been ran through with piercing metal and spilled out all its blood and bodily fluids, leading to a much grosser and wetter decomposition in said moist and dank dark room, festering and rotting and molding. Now you may think Springtrap stinks. And you're right. But actually he might not smell as bad as you think. So, I don't have any experience with the smell of dead human bodies. But I have smelled roadkill, unfortunately. So going off of that, since Afton was pretty much totally mushed up, there's a strong smack to the face. It's a powerful smell, worse than rotten eggs, sour and pungent. I could believe that it would set off a sort of fight or flight reflex because you smell that and all of your senses know that there's something dead nearby. You may not recognize the smell of a dead body, but you would probably clock this right away. I've heard folks mentioning that rotting has a sweet smell. I've never smelled anything sweet off of that. If it's there, it's going to be hidden under the rancid rabbit's other nodes of putrefied flesh and mold. So, how could he not smell that bad? Well, because he died ages ago. Technically, Springtrap's entrails shouldn't even be here anymore. They should have rotted away a decade ago, and by now the smell would still be present, but wouldn't have that same God Almighty punch that it would have, say, a week or so after it happened. This body should be mummified, and in that time a lot of that would have settled down, leaving a very smelly suit and a somewhat reeking body. So at one time, Springtrap was horrendous, but judging him from 30 years later after the day of death, that scent might have lost some of its luster, perhaps. Perhaps something can still give Springtrap a run for his money. So, moving on. Let's cover the nightmares in a big group, because despite the gaping mouths and open body cavities, there's a plethora of evidence suggesting that these guys are just gas hallucinations. And if that is the case, then they're not going to smell like giant mouths of unbrushed teeth, but that gas. Chemicals and bitter twangs that give you that instant headache. Not necessarily bad in the traditional sense, but no doubt extremely unpleasant with how much gas will have to be pumped into the room to get that effect. And you may remember in the book Didophobia that the main character doesn't smell any gas scent. Long story short, didophobia, nightmare fuel gas, you get the picture. However, that doesn't mean that it's odorless. Instead, he's probably lived with the scent so long that he's gotten used to it. That phenomenon is a real thing too, and it's how you might not notice a scent, say your kitty's litter box, but someone new who comes in may detect it immediately. So I would say on the whole, unless they've just gored someone somehow, the nightmares probably would smell largely like that gas. Now, Plushtrap isn't just a nightmare though, or at least there's a tangible Plushtrap somewhere, likely. So what does he smell like? Despite looking like Springtrap, Plushtrap is just a tiny toy. He's got that musty smell, like from the bottom of an old toy box. May have a tinge of chemicals since he is probably used alongside the fear gas. And Okay, there's no confirmation, but Plushtrap strikes me as the type who might eat small animals with his giant chompers. So either chemicals and dust, or chemicals and dust and dead animal. Now, the Funtimes are a different story, and the first case of a band of animatronics where everyone kind of more than likely smells different. See, the animatronics are made of chrome plates, so you would assume that the outside of them would smell mostly like that chrome. And true, but it's what they have on the inside that changes things. Starting with Circus Baby. Circus Baby is an interesting case because she likely has two distinct smells in one. She is, by design, made to smell like birthday cake. Or, well, at least she claims she does. A sweet smell that's appealing to the senses, and perhaps with the milky scent of ice cream from her ice cream maker. A delicious blend. All used to cover up the smell of blood and decay from the bodies she yanks in, dispatches, and then carries around likely for hours. Now, assumedly, she's emptied out once she gets back to the scooping room back at the rental company, so that's not long enough for the decay to really kick in, but the smell of blood, depending on how she dispatches these kids inside, would probably be distinct. So imagine a birthday clown that smells like cake and ice cream with an undertone of something coppery and off, but you can't put your finger on what it is. Not super unpleasant though, I would guess. Funtime Freddy has a similar issue with his stomach tank made for taking in and taking out children. However, unlike Baby, we don't have any confirmation that he has any distinct scent, and knowing Funtime Freddy's sadistic and bloodthirsty personality, especially how macabre he can be, he might just walk around reeking of blood most of the time. I would say that there's a pretty likely chance that he does, and if not, then he probably has spurts of artificial scent trying to cover it up. Funtime Foxy is specifically made to cover up smells, and has a tail that releases variable scents. Going off a Baby's birthday cake smell, it probably smells like that, or flowers, or pizza, just various scents to cover up the blood smell stinking up Funtime Freddy. However, I think there is one drawback to Funtime Foxy, and that's that he's supposed to be a scent lure. If her role is to constantly release clouds of nice-smelling fumes to cover up the stench of death, there's no doubt that they're probably really strong. He probably reeks of sprayable air freshener, and it could likely be so overpowering that it becomes overbearing. As someone who gets headaches from strong chemical and harsh flower scents, as you can probably tell from my description of headaches from chemicals earlier, I could see Funtime Foxy inadvertently being unpleasant. Still, better than the blood, of course. Now, Ballora is arguably the best smelling Funtime. Since Circus Baby and Funtime Foxy have scents to mask their other work, there's a chance that while not listed in the blueprints, Ballora has something too. But we know she doesn't get hands-on with the kidnapping and killing, and instead is just made to distract. So at best, she smells like something like birthday cake or perfume, and at worst, she smells like chrome. Like that metal plating, which would largely be scentless. In comparison to everyone else, that's a major step up. It's a variable band. The ringleader reeks of birthday cake and something off. Funtime Freddy probably smells. Funtime Foxy smells even stronger, but it's a good scent, and Ballora either has no smell or it's softer. It's like walking into a birthday party. You're gonna get blindsided left and right. But there's another member of the band. And I don't mean the Minireenas who probably smell like wood since they're made of wood, or the Bidybabs that probably smell like either metal or like, an old Xbox turned on for the first time in 10 years. But this band member is technically the band. This is the combination of all bandmates, Ennard. So I know what you're thinking. Ennard climbs into bodies, so he must smell really bad. He would pick up everything you'd get from the inside of a slowly putrefying body, and let me tell you, that's a special kind of ripe. But there's actually a trick here. Every instance of Ennard that we see is before he goes in the body. When he comes out, they immediately form into Molten Freddy. Assumedly, we don't know the actual time frame, but I would say it was probably pretty soon. So, technically, Molten Freddy would have all that body odor on him, while Ennard, being the state before the scooping, would just smell like metal, oil, maybe degreaser. Heck, he might have even picked up the smell of birthday cake from Baby and Funtime Foxy. Odds are Ennard himself doesn't smell that bad, or really at all. It's after he hops into Michael when he starts to stink, but as far as we're aware, he comes out and becomes Molten Freddy, so that's not really entered any longer. That covers sister location. Well, except Lolbit, who probably doesn't have any scent. They're literally an apparition, usually on a TV. And Yenndo, who likely just, again, smells like metal. This is actually a pretty distinct change from the earlier bands. While the bands before this had maybe one member that smelled a little differently or was slightly differently ranked, this is a case where one member and one member might be on two completely different sides of the spectrum. We have those extra details too that lead to a little more speculation, so we kind of have to guesstimate to what extent everyone reeks in this case. It's pretty neat. Not like the next band, who are the Rockstars, who are probably not much to write home about. From the look of them, they probably smell a lot like the Toy Animatronics, except a lot newer and cleaner. There's likely a plastic scent to them and not much metal unless you get like really close while they're moving. Maybe there's a heated smell because they don't seem to have enough breathing room to cool down. Easy to clean, not likely to get into anything dirty, a very small shelf life as well, not too much to write home about. There's only one exception, and that would be Lefty, who is also brand new but made for other uses. I say this with no bias. Okay, maybe a little bias. I say this with no bias, but I have a hunch that Lefty has a funny smell. He was probably made or refurbished recently, so he likely smells of brand new plastic, but he also may smell of fire since he has the puppet inside of him, which may have just popped out of the Fazbear Frights fire. It's not enough to say Lefty smells bad, but I'm sure he smells distinctly off, and that accompanies the lazy eye and slackjaw pretty well. And also because I just remembered that I forget him later on, Carney. Carney almost definitely smells like the other Rockstars do, except, of course, after he gets burned, when he gets a burn smell. Now, there's not really any direct evidence that any of the Rockstars or Lefty are refurbished from Carney, but in this case, I don't think that would make much of a difference. Now, the Mediocre Melodies absolutely smell funny. These things have likely been sitting in a back room for years, and they're made of fabric material, so they likely absorb moisture. Got a little dusty, a little mildewy, but they look quite clean, so it's probably more musty than anything. The outlier being Orville, who's being sold by a more expensive catalog and likely is in better condition and was probably sprayed down before being sold at auction. Music Man likely smells like metal, since he's all chrome, and I doubt many kids have gotten close. And again, sold at a high-end auction. And Funtime Chica is probably similar. She is a Funtime, but she seems too slender to hold bodies. So instead, she's probably a distractor and deterrent. No corpse smell, probably has like a similar fake birthday cake smell to Circus Baby or whatever Funtime Foxy's puffing out. And looks rather clean, so there's that. L-Chip probably smells like a Rockstar Animatronic that was sprayed down before it was sold, and was likely made recently. Considering his price and what catalog you have to buy him from, I don't think he's secondhand. Candy Cadet is the same as the others, plastic or metal, but sold in the cheaper catalog, so probably not fancied up. Now, he is full of candy, but you probably can't smell that candy from outside. A sort of non-scent all around. The security puppet looks like rubbery plastic, so it probably has that sort of scent. More plastic smell. It's hard to describe, but it probably smells like a fast food toy, just big. Pretty much, when it comes to Pizzeria Simulator, all of the animatronics in the front room or on the stage either smell old, fine, or good. These things are expected to entertain guests. Many of them are probably given a quick clean after being purchased. Many of them haven't probably been used before. And the ones that have probably been sitting in a warehouse for like the last 10 years. There's not really too much to write home about. But backstage, and beneath stage technically, there is something much more foul hiding. The scrap animatronics, literal walking garbage. And it's okay for me to call them this. They're all confirmed child killers, and they enjoy what they're doing. Starting with Molten Freddy, let me tell you something. You smell him before you see him, and he smells like a dead animal. No, worse. This thing is metal intestines that sat inside of a rotten body, got spat out, probably hung out in the sewers, but likely can't get wet, then made a mask out of trash and hung out with the garbage cans in the back alley. He reeks. And no doubt, It was being located inside of the rotten corpse's softest, mushiest area part that caused this. That and being steered by Funtime Freddy, who absolutely, no doubt about it, in this form, likely doesn't care about how he smells. Heck, he's a sadistic weirdo. He may wear the smell of rot like a badge of honor. This is one of the only animatronics that I can pretty much guarantee that if you touch him, there's a good chance that you're gonna pick up some sort of funky disease. And leaves like a film residue on your hand whenever you touch him. I don't know why that came to me, but it suddenly did. It suddenly occurred to me that while Molten Freddy just looks like a bundle of wires, you probably would have residue left on you from everything that he's gotten himself into. And that is absolutely disgusting. And I genuinely believe that Funtime Freddy wouldn't be bothered by it at all. Any case, Springtrap. Springtrap is technically a body in a suit, and odds are he doesn't smell as bad as Molten Freddy. Or Springtrap. See, yeah, Springtrap does contain Afton's human body, like Springtrap, but unlike Springtrap's moldier exterior and mushier remains, Springtrap's actually a lot more dried out. He's mostly exposed bone, and the only sprigs of flesh are kind of jerky now. He stinks, don't get me wrong, just not as bad. And Scrap Baby probably even less so. See, she too came out of Michael's body, but a lot of her parts have been replaced and replenished with bits and bobs and scraps, so a majority of her body is just old, rusty metal. Grimy, dirty, but not rotten. And the reeking wires are probably buried a little further under the shell, so Baby be stinky, but not like Molten Freddy level of stank. Now let's air out things in here by moving on to the more pleasant animatronics, with more to consider, such as the Glamrocks. The characters that most of you are probably the most interested to hear about. Starting off with Glamrock Freddy and Monty Gator, two characters who probably do smell very similarly. They both likely, again, smell like plastic. Like a plastic slide, but they're also probably and regularly sanitized. They might also smell similar to their Fizzy Fazz flavors for branding purposes, in which they would be orange and lime respectively, but they definitely smell alright. Except for Roxy. Roxy almost definitely smells fantastic. Being the face of the Pizzaplex's salon, which not only does hair and makeup but sells products for both, if she has products in her name and with her likeness on them, then she probably is using them. And it would be a great way to advertise those products to guests. And we do know that Roxy is very conscientious of keeping her hair and tail clean, such as in Security Breach where she may get dirty, but her hair stays pretty well kept until her accident. I'll get back to her more later because there's more that I have to cover with her, but the bottom line is that if any of the animatronics are self-conscious enough to take care of their body, not being content with just smelling okay or like nothing, but having to actively go out of their way to smell good, it would be Roxy. Glamrock Chica, on the other hand, smells very much like a trash can, as she is often shoveling rotten food and trash into her mouth, and since it is specifically rotten food from the garbage, it's probably really ripe, specifically her breath. I mean, she doesn't breathe, but when she opens her mouth, you will smell that garbage waft up from inside. The only plus is that she's likely cleaned regularly, and unlike the original Chica, Glamrock Chica is made of metal, and that casing, neither of which probably absorbs too much smell and can clean easier. But that hinges solely on if Fazbear Entertainment isn't too lazy to bathe the chicken. Also, it should be noted here that while I'm sort of just like doing the base level of animatronics, since I thought it would be a little boring to deconstruct that Shattered Monty smells like metal and Ruined Monty smells like metal, and really the Shattered and Ruined animatronics are basically just the scrap versions of the Glamrocks, and there's not really too much to say worthwhile about them. Except Ruined Chica, who is now not only overflowing with garbage, but is covered in what I'm pretty sure is rotten moldy cheese. Because we do know that she's still getting into the garbage, piles of it. Take Glamrock Chica, stuff her with decomposing foodstuff and old gunk, and then roll her around in it, and serve her with a lazy eye and you get Ruined Chica. She smells abominable. But next up, Sun and Moon probably smell the same. Okay, Sun and Moon absolutely smell exactly the same, and that smell is almost definitely crafting supplies. You know, hot glue, paints, If you painted at all in elementary school or had an art room at your school, odds are you know what Sun and Moon smell like. They probably also keep clean since Sun is very neurotic about cleaning. Though he does seem to get grime on him, like handprints all over. Though it could be more so just transfer from dozens of tiny hands. The Pizzaplex only just closed. I'll give him the benefit of the doubt and say that Sun didn't sanitize yet for the next day, and he would have to constantly sanitize around little kids. We just caught him at a bad time. DJ Music Man is also likely clean considering that he himself is supposed to clean, but even if he doesn't clean himself, he doesn't look like he'd pick up much dirt. More than likely though, he would have an overwhelming processing smell. You know, like I mentioned animatronics smelling like metal or hot, like an overheating computer. No doubt DJ Music Man would overwhelmingly smell like that just because he's so big. In hindsight, he's also probably constantly puffing out hot air. Not that bad though. The little wind-up Music Men just again smell like old metal and possibly melted plastic. The staff bots aren't much to write home about. Again, smelling like hardware on wheels, with nodes of whatever job they've been assigned to. L-Chip Server, they smell like tacos. Mopbot, maybe a hint of floor cleaner. The exception being the Alpha Staff Bots, also known as the Nightmarian Staff Bots, which are located in the Pizzaplex's underground dump, where they've likely picked up the smell of garbage, being coated in grime and slick with oil. It's pungent for sure. But what would you expect from a robot built to conform to its roles so well? It becomes one with the trash. The Glamrock Yendos are more metal Yendos that smell like metal and probably smell damp because they're located down in the dank basement, so again, there's not much to say about them. So far, the Pizzaplex is smelling great. The animatronics are doing fine. And then there's Springtrap. In case the gloss of slime on his skin doesn't tip it off, this guy's back in rotten territory. Unless it's just oil, but I don't know, I think that's corpse grease. It's clear that Springtrap is some kind of a corpse with its skeletal teeth and bones and extremely deteriorated suit. It's an extremely deteriorated Spring Bonnie. So, yeah, that Springtrap stink returns, and this time it's back on Springtrap's lair because it's moist. That wet means that rot smells fresh. The only caveat being that it has been so long that this body got in there, assuming that this is still the remains of Afton, is not the chick from the Tales from the Pizzaplex she was smushed into a dog. It can still be the mimic wearing Afton's branded merch. The point being that if this is Springtrap, which it seems to be, then that means it's been a long time since he initially died. That body had to have shriveled and dried up, and that means this slimy gloss is just oil. In which case, he just, smells like an old dead body covered in oil instead of a fresh, actively festering body. And speaking of something soaked in oil and made up of bodies, we've got the largest animatronic of the lot based on sheer mass. The tangle of wires known as, the tangle, or the blob. A lump of animatronic parts smothered in slimy wires. From that description alone, to its size, to its greasiness, there's no doubt that it has a smell, and it's likely not pleasant. However, I'm going to take a guess that this slimy grime that covers it is either wet dirt or likely, again, oil, so it's going to have like an overwhelming oil scent. That isn't going to be pleasant, especially at this magnitude, but it's a far cry compared to trash, moldy cheese, and pureed bodily fluids. The last animatronic of Ruin and the first of Secret of the Mimic would be the Mimic, but as these mimics are a bit different, they will get different ratings. Ruin Mimic, Ruinic, has been buried underneath the building for a long time, as stated by who may or may not be Gregory, sitting in a room with practically zero airflow due to the concrete over the door, stagnant, along with some musty old mascot suits, which the Mimic is seen putting on at least once. With all this in mind, the Ruinic is predominantly smelling like gold metal, maybe some dirt, dusty, stale water, mildewy mascots. Metal doesn't pick up scent too easily unless there's something left behind on it, so it probably just, again, smells old. M2, the Secret of the Mimic, likely smells even stronger like metal since it's just been made more recently and looks more clean. However, there may be a funky scent around the hands since he's been killing and suiting technicians, shoving them into old mascots. And we can't say for sure that M2 would then go over and wash his hands in the sink. So, Ruinic smells like an old sock, and M2 has stanky fingers. And as for the Mxes and Fiona, they smell predominantly of running hardware, with Mxes probably smelling more dusty and grimy, and likely throwing off a lot more heat. The Mxes could single-handedly heat a log cabin. But moving fully into Secret of the Mimic, we have a slew of animatronics who, up until the events of Secret of the Mimic, were mostly just sitting around not doing anything. And not for an extremely long time either, probably a few years or so. But not decades. So on the whole, none of them really have much going on. Jackie probably shares Marionette's dusty attic scent, and even when it runs into the basement, it just gets some oil on it and some grime and some dirt. Big Top smells like metal and brass, and that hard-to-explain warm paper fair smell, like freshly rolled tickets. After he gets broken, not much changes. And Nurse Dolly. Guess what? Predominantly metal exterior with some fabric accents. Smells like metal. And depending on what exactly she's made out of, once she becomes Molten Dolly, she probably smells like, chemicals that may or may not immediately start killing your brain cells. It kinda depends. Now, there are some non-animatronics crowding up Murray's costume manor, specifically the costumes themselves, which would range from dusty and stuffy but fine, to smelling like the dead body shoved inside of them. But I just get the feel that they just in general don't smell good. And for some reason, I especially get that vibe from Party Time Chica. It's weird, she's sealed away in a box, she has probably never been worn, but just something about the chicken strikes me as having a sour smell to it. Maybe it's just its funky dance moves. The White Tiger mascot is like a Golden Freddy sort of situation where it either exists in a physical body and thus smells like a damp, dank underground parking garage, probably a little mildewy, a little sour, or it's non-tangible and probably smells like nothing at all. And that's really every animatronic, except the one or two I no doubt forgot. Assume they didn't stink enough to be remembered. Like Bonnet, yet another plasticky metal bunny. So let's go from the best to the worst and crown both of them. Starting with the best, you probably already know who's sitting here. As much as I'd love to put one of my favorites here, there's no denying that out of all of the animatronics, Roxanne Wolf probably smells the best, because she's at a functional pizzeria, she's in good condition, she's self-conscious of her own image, she washes her hair and keeps herself clean, and likely has her own line of hair care products and possibly perfume. And one of the most important factors that I didn't bring up earlier is that Roxy has a sense of smell. She can detect Gregory by smell and can be heard sniffing in security breach. So yeah, she's going to know if she smells, and she's self-conscious enough that she's going to fix it ASAP. So there's no doubt in my mind that the best smelling animatronic is Roxanne Wolf. And if anyone else smelled better than her, and she found out, she would make it her mission to reclaim her title. Now let's get into the good smelling animatronics. Good smelling animatronics would be Glamrock Freddy and Monty Gator, as they're frontlining at the Pizzaplex and supposed to greet guests. Ballora, being a deterrent and distracting animatronic, most likely smells like birthday cake, and belongs here too. And you know, for good measure, I'll put Funtime Foxy and Funtime Chica here as well. Even if Funtime Foxy may smell strong, that's still possibly a good smell. And being that Music Man is a Funtime, I think there's a possibility that he's scented, so I'll put him here as well. El Chip too, because he's probably been cleaned up. Next, into the largest tier, which would actually be the okay tier, which would be scentless or at least minimal unoffensive smell. Sun's going to be in this tier because he's around a lot of kids. I have no doubt he's built to stay clean and appealing to guests, but that many kids are going to get things funky. But he likely smells okay, and probably does have that nostalgic arts and crafts supply scent. DJ Music Man, the Rockstars, who are all brand new and probably kept clean, the security puppet, the toy animatronics, with the puppet a little demoted because of the dusty attic scent. Lefty gets docked because he might smell like a fire, but it's probably not strong enough to count as bad. Innard joins here too, and that's specifically under the assumption that we're counting genuine Innard, which is from before he enters Michael, so he probably just has that metal scent. Not great, but not enough to be bad. Same for M2, specifically in Secret of the Mimic. In Ruin, he might be a bit more grimy. Big Top is probably similar, maybe Dolly too, mostly metal, mostly unoffensive. Jackie and the Mediocre Melodies bring up the rear, likely absorbing smell from age, but again, not enough to be bad, just musty. Some of the mascot suits, the cleaner ones, could also go here as well. Now, Circus Baby is an interesting one because I couldn't decide whether that birthday cake smell could overcome the body smell, and after a while, and considering how quickly she scooped after the parties, assumedly, I'm going to say that Baby likely smells okay enough, as long as her plates are closed and she's kept clean. But I'm putting her as close to the line as I can. I forgot to put Plushtrap and Candy Cadet in the lineup, and I couldn't find a good way to splice them in, so right here I'll say that both probably smell okay. Candy Cadet being scentless, and Plushtrap being sorta grungy. Unless my dead animal suspicion is true, then I'll plop down into bad, or maybe even foul. Now onto the bad, starting with the White Tiger. If he smells like anything, he probably smells like mildew and mold, being that he's so exposed to a dark, likely dank basement. Then Scrap Baby, exposed to garbage, possibly exposed to a body, but largely rebuilt. She smells, but not too strong. Maybe Party Time Chica. And the nastier mascots, we'll just put them here. Then we have the Phantoms and the Nightmares, which are in a similar situation where they're an invasive smell, one likely a fire scent and the other of strong chemicals. Both can be overwhelming and unpleasant, but I couldn't decide which of the two would be worse. Phantoms will burn your lungs, Nightmares will melt your brain. Then is Funtime Freddy, because I have no doubt that he's smelly and smeared with as much blood on the inside as he can be. And finally, the Blob. The only thing saving the Tangled Blob from foul is because the black slime probably smells like oil. It's still pungent and overwhelming, no doubt, but isn't quite rotten. Now on to foul. We've got Glamrock Chica and Ruin Chica, both of which are walking garbage cans, as I mentioned before. Glamrock Chica being the better of the two because likely they're still trying their best to cover up the scent and cleaning her out. While once she gets to Ruin Chica, she's so deteriorated and she's abandoned, so it's just piling up inside of her, with even an entire trash bag trying to slip loose from her stomach. It's bad. Then we have Freddy, Bonnie, Foxy, Chica, and possibly Golden Freddy, with Chica actually the worst of the lot. As I said before, they had bodies stuffed inside of them, they were not cleaned, people not only smelled the decay, but saw it oozing out of them. And still, Freddy's did nothing about it, they just closed and left them there. So yeah, they're really rancid. With Chica a little worse because you can also throw some rotten food in there with it. But also, on the flip side, might be a little better because she's constantly doused in bug spray and that might be so overpowering that you can't smell anything else. Then there's Scrap Trap, the driest, then Burn Trap, the oiled, and the worst smelling animatronic is not Springtrap. It's Molten Freddy. He reeks. There's no doubt about it. He came out of a body, went into the sewer, wriggled around the garbage, and his exposed wiring, and might be frying all that nastiness with his overheating coils. And unlike Springtrap, the thing that pushes Molten Freddy over the edge is that while that rotten rabbit has been sitting for a long time, inadvertently losing some of its pungent power, as far as we know, Molten Freddy might be fresh. We don't know exactly how long he was wandering around, but he had to have been sitting in that body for a while. At some point, Molten Freddy was super rancid. He was in the center of the decay. And he did nothing to clean himself out afterwards. And let's be completely blunt, while Springtrap sat in a room and rotted alone, there's nothing to say that when Molten Freddy came out of Michael, he didn't start going and killing other people and no one knew about it. Because in the world of Five Nights at Freddy's, people go missing all the time and no one really questions it. Molten Freddy could have been killing people left and right, and there's no doubt that he would have left those remains on him. In fact, he might have even gone in them again if he could have. He would have had to make a great deal of effort, but this is Funtime Freddy leading the brigade. He would have done it for giggles. And here's the kicker here. Let's say Springtrap was fresh. Let's say these two held the same time period of decay. If that was the case, I still think Molten Freddy would smell worse because, like I said, he would have been at that center, at that core. While Springtrap, there's like a thin line of fabric blocking us. It's still bad, but Molten Freddy came out and crawled around in that runoff drain, and that likely didn't dislodge the funk. And I will insist on this point, not just to be a contrarian, but because I think that there's layers of disgusting nodes wafting from this funky bear. So I will crown Molten Freddy, because I believe deep in my heart, somewhat biased by the fact that Springtrap is just too easy of a target, that he is the smelliest animatronic. Rancid personality, metal intestine body, and no doubt loves it. And with that, we come to the end. Now, with this ranking specifically, I took a few liberties and I made a few assumptions, so I'm sure these aren't the universal opinions of everyone. It also comes down to preference. Folks who don't have a problem with chemical scents will likely not see the nightmares as being that unpleasant, and others might be really grossed out by the moldy cheese mouth that they deem ruin Chica the smelliest. It's a matter of opinion at the end of the day. And here's mine. Springtrap smells awful, but Molten Freddy's just as bad if not worse. Go buy Roxanne Wolf's shampoo line and be a winner. And thank you for watching.